Preservation refers to the set of activities that aims to prolong the life of a record and relevant metadata, or enhance its value, or improve access to it through non-interventive means. This includes actions taken to influence records creators prior to selection and acquisition. It should be distinguished from conservation restoration of cultural heritage, which refers to the treatment and repair of individual items to slow decay or restore them to a usable state. Conservation is occasionally used interchangeably with preservation, particularly outside the professional literature. History. Antecedents. Preservation as a formal profession in libraries and archives dates from the 20th century, but its philosophy and practice has roots in many earlier traditions. In many ancient societies, appeals to heavenly protectors were used to preserve books, scrolls and manuscripts from insects, fire and decay. To the ancient Egyptians, the scarab, a dung beetle, was a protector of written products. The scarab was also used as a holder, a medium for personal name seals. A figurine of a scarab would be carved out of stone, and then on the smooth stomach of the scarab, the engraving of a seal was made. Later, this oval image was used for the representation of the cartouche, or name, title seals. In ancient Babylon, Nabu was the heavenly patron of books and protector of clay tablets. Nabu is the Babylonian god of wisdom and writing, and is the patron of the scribes, librarians and archivists. Nabu's symbols are the clay writing tablet with the cuneiform writing stylus. He usually wears a horned cap, and often stands with his hands clasped together in the ancient gesture of priesthood. Nabu engraves the destiny of each person, as the gods have decided, on the tablets of sacred record. Thus, Nabu has the power to increase or diminish at will the length of human life. The image of Nabu is also one of the images on the brass doors designed by Lee Laurie, entitled A History of the Written Word, on the John Adams Building of the Library of Congress. The figures on the doors also include Thoth, an Egyptian god, Samchira Kangji, the Chinese patron of writing, Nabu, an Akkadian god, Brahma, the Indian god, Cadmus, the Greek sower of dragon's teeth, and Tamura the Tamuras, a hero of the ancient Persians. In Hindu beliefs, Ganesh is the elephant-headed god of learning and new enterprises. As the god of wisdom, he knows all. Since he has the head of an elephant, he also has the reputed memory of the elephant, and thus does not forget anything. His statue is placed over the doors of and entrances of many buildings in India and Sri Lanka, including most libraries. Ganesh is the scribe who wrote the Mahabharata from Vyasa's dictation. Ganesh is credited with inventing the Sanskrit alphabet, and he broke off his right tusk to make the first pen. As the inventor of the alphabet, as a scribe, and as a keeper of wisdom and knowledge, Ganesh is credited as a patron of libraries, librarians and booksellers and buyers. In Arabic and other Eastern societies, sometimes a traditional method to protect books and scrolls was a metaphysical appeal to Kabi, the king of the cockroaches. By appealing to the king to protect manuscript, cockroaches of less nobility would refrain from intruding on documents which could be eaten by the king only. Since many manuscripts were made with fish glue, starch paste, leather and other tasty substances, insect appetites were a constant and never-ending problem to Arabic books and scrolls. A similar technique from Syria was to name the first and last page of a document, a manuscript, the page of the king of the cockroaches, in the hope that the cockroach king will control all other insects. Translated appeals include, "O Kabi, save the paper. O Kabi, save this book from the worms." and Okabe Guy do not eat this paper. Quote, in Mugrabi manuscripts the word appears in its evidently corrupt form, Katash, and is clearly used as a talisman, and mentions, after a certain Muhammad al-Samiri, that when one writes Katash on the first and last folio of the book, one can be sure that worms will not attack it. Quote, there are 3 saints in the Christian Church that are closely associated with libraries as patrons. St. Lawrence is an early saint of the Church, who seems to be more respected in European libraries than those in the Western Hemisphere. St. Jerome is most often considered the patron saint of libraries in the US and Canada. St. Catherine of Alexandria, or Catherine of Alexandria, is most often considered the patroness of libraries in the Orthodox tradition. In some Christian monasteries, prayers and curses were placed at the end of books to prevent theft, or to damn the thieves. Frequently called a book curse, these were placed in the book to deter theft. The him that stealeth a book from this library, may it change into a serpent in his hand and rend him. May he be struck with palsy, and all his members blasted. May bookworms gnaw his entrails, in token of the worm which dieth not. And when at last he goeth to his final perdition, let the flames of hell consume him forever and aye. Another example of a Christian curse is this medieval jingle placed at the end of a work, Christ's curse upon the crook who takes away this book. Or in the Latin, sit maledictus per Christum, qui librum subracratistum. Quote, the ancient Chinese god Waitumba is the patron god of libraries and books. Many examples of appeals to Waitumba can be found in Chinese manuscripts dated 500 or more years ago. Sometimes the last page of manuscripts would be dedicated to him, in a manner very similar to the Arabic prayer of protection to the king of the cockroaches. Waitumba, an ancient Chinese god, protects books against destruction from fire, worms and insects, and robbers big as small. Waitumba is especially invoked for the protection of books and libraries against fire. Since the modern books are suffering from acid decomposition, Waitumba is especially relevant to modern librarianship. A modern product to deacidify paper is named in his honor. Sri Lankan symbols or images of the Sinhalese fire demons are hung in the corners of libraries and other buildings to appease the incendiary demons and to avert fire, lightning and cataclysm. According to Sinhalese mythology, the fire demons from Ceylon have no body, and show only a grinning face surrounded by flames. The expressions shown on the figures are of delirious glee or insane pleasure, as these demons eventually burn themselves up, leaving only charcoal and ashes and dust. These demons especially appreciate large amounts of paper such as books and magazines, as they are ready fuel for their infernal fires. Needless to say, these fire demons are hung up around banks and currency exchange offices as well, to avert catastrophe to other paper products. Since fire and acid decomposition are a special problem for libraries because of the concentration of paper products, the fire demons are also included when used to assuage these destroyers of libraries and books. The Aztec and Mayan Indians of Latin America also had deities concerned with libraries. The major god, Calcotl, is credited with the discoveries of the arts, the calendar, and of writing. A single feather, a plume at the beginning or at the end of a document, a stone carving would indicate a dedication to the feathered serpent. Quote, this symbol degenerated over time to a single fringed line. Human record-keeping arguably dates back to the cave painting boom of the Upper Paleolithic, some 32,000–40,000 years ago. More direct antecedents of the writing systems that developed in the 4th millennium B.C. Written record-keeping and information-sharing practices, along with oral tradition, sustain and transmit information from one group to another. This level of preservation has been supplemented over the last century with the professional practice of preservation and conservation in the cultural heritage community. Oral tradition or oral culture, the transmission of information from one generation to the next without a writing system. Antiquarian practices, including scribal practice, burial practice, the libraries at Pergamum, Alexandria, and other ancient archives. Medieval practices, including the scriptorium and relic collection. Renaissance and the changing conception of artists and works of art. Enlightenment and the encyclopedists. Romantic movements imperative to preserve. Significant events 1933. William Barrow introduces the field of conservation to paper deacidification when he publishes a paper on the acid paper problem. In later studies, Barrow tested paper from American books made between 1900 and 1949 and learned that after 40 years the books had lost on average 96% of their original strength. After less than 10 years, they had already lost 64%. Barrow determined that this rapid deterioration was not the direct result of using wood pulp fibers, since rag papers of this period were also aging rapidly, but rather due to the residual sulfuric acid produced in both rag and wood pulp papers. Manufacturing methods used after 1870 employed sulfuric acid for sizing and bleaching the paper. Earlier paper-making methods left the final product only mildly alkaline or even neutral. Such paper has maintained its strength for 300 to 800 years, despite sulfur dioxide and other air pollutants. Barrow's 1933 article on the fragile state of wood pulp paper predicted the life expectancy, or LA, of this paper was approximately 40 to 50 years. At that point the paper would begin to show signs of natural decay, and he concluded that research for a new media on which to write and print was needed. 1966, the flood of the river Arno in Florence, Italy damaged and destroyed millions of rare books and led to the development of restoration laboratories and new methods in conservation. Instrumental in this process was conservationist Peter Waters, who led a group of volunteers, called Mud Angels, in restoring thousands of books and papers. This event awakened many historians, librarians, and other professionals to the importance of having a preservation plan. Many consider this flood to be one of the worst disasters since the burning of the Alexandria Library in ancient Rome. It spurred a resurgence in the profession of preservation and conservation worldwide. 1987, Terry Saunders releases the film Slow Fires, on the preservation of the human record, which examines paper embrittlement resulting from acid decay. 1989, March 7, major U.S. print publishers convene at NYPL to endorse a community-wide commitment to utilizing ISO 9706 certified permanent durable paper in order to combat the acid paper epidemic. Significant people in the history of preservation. William Barrow was an American chemist and paper conservator, and a pioneer of library and archives conservation. He introduced the field of conservation to paper deacidification through alkalization. Paul N. Banks was conservator and head of the conservation department at the Newberry Library from 1964 to 1981 and published regularly on book binding, book and paper conservation, and problems related to conservation. He designed and implemented a curriculum for Columbia University's School of Library Science that dealt directly with preservation training. Pamela Darling, author and historian, was preservation specialist for the Association of Research Libraries. Her works include materials to aid libraries in establishing their own comprehensive preservation programs. Carolyn Harris worked as head of Columbia University Libraries Preservation Division from 1981 until 1987. where she worked closely with Paul Banks. She published extensive research throughout her career, especially dealing with mass deacidification of wood pulp paper. Peter Waters, a former conservation officer at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., worked in the areas of disaster recovery and preparedness, and the salvaging of water-damaged paper goods. Nicholson Baker is a contemporary American novelist and author of Double-Fold, a criticism of libraries' destruction of paper-based media. Patricia Batten, as the first president of the Commission on Preservation and Access, worked to organize a national campaign both for the use of alkaline paper in publishing companies and for a national program of preservation. Microfilming. John F. Dean, Preservation and Conservation Librarian at Cornell University, has made contributions towards improving preservation efforts in developing countries. Specifically, Dean has created online tutorials for library conservation and preservation in Southeast Asia and Iraq and the Middle East. The Paul Banks and Carolyn Harris Preservation Award for Outstanding Preservation Specialists in Library and Archival Science is given annually by the Association for Library Collections and AMP Technical Services, a subdivision of the American Library Association. It is awarded in recognition of professional preservation specialists who have made significant contributions to the field. Banks-Harris Award winners. Sally Buchanan 2001. Buchanan received the award in recognition of years of service in the preservation field while an associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Information Science. Ellen R. McCready 2002 to 2008. From 1975 to 2004, McCready edited and published the Abbey newsletter, covering important information for preservation professionals. She also conducted research regarding paper making and acid testing. From 1988 to 1997, she published the Alkaline Paper Advocate. John F. Dean 2003. Since its inception in 1985, Dean has led the Department of Preservation and Conservation at Cornell University. Jan Merrill Oldham 2004. As the Malloy Rabinovitz Preservation Librarian at Harvard University, Merrill Oldham oversees the Weissman Preservation Center and the Preservation and Imaging Department. Paul Conway 2005. Conway is an associate professor in the University of Michigan School of Information and has worked with Yale and Duke University. After beginning his career at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library, his research and educational work focuses primarily on digital preservation and electronic media. Gary Frost 2006. Currently the University Conservator at the University of Iowa Libraries. Frost has been an educator and practitioner in the field of library preservation for almost 40 years. Frost is actively involved in library preservation and maintains an online blog at futureofthebook.com. Walter Henry 2007. Henry, a conservator at the Stanford University Libraries and Academic Information Resources, is the creator of Conservation Online and the Conservationist List. Janet Gertz 2008. Director for Preservation, Columbia University Libraries, has been chair of ALCT's Preservation and Reformatting section. She has taught, spoken and published widely on topics ranging from traditional library preservation, disaster preparedness, commercial binding, and preservation, microfilming to digital preservation, audio preservation, preservation metadata and large-scale mass digitization. She is an adjunct faculty member in the Palmer School of Library and Information Science, Long Island University, and has been a guest lecturer at Rutgers Preservation Institute and at Queens College. Barclay Ogden 2009. Michelle Clunan 2010. Roberto Pilit 2011.